Guys, welcome back to Rodder's Garage. Today, back on the 58 Cadillac for some X-frame modifications and some floor pan fabrication. Let's get started. In the last video on the 58 Cadillac, I got my lowering springs installed on all four corners, 3-inch lowering springs, and also did a serious amount of cleanup in the engine bay and got everything sprayed with SEM Rust Guard and the engine put back in. Got the thing set on the ground to see what the ride height was going to look like, and then went inside the car and cut a big hole in the floor so I could eyeball where the pinion height was now with the 3-inch lowering springs in the back. I then pulled a tape measure from the pinion to the yoke on the trans and kind of did the math on how much I would have to raise the top of the X-frame to allow for a single piece 3-inch OD drive shaft. If I raise the top of this 3.5 inches, 3 would probably work. I am going to go 3.5 inches. If I raise the top of the X-frame 3.5 inches, that is going to give me all the room in the world to run a single piece drive shaft in the car. I also will have to raise under the back seat a little bit, basically to the same height as whatever the X-frame comes out to. And after that's completed, rear end will hit the bump stops long before the drive shaft can ever make contact with anything under the car. So that is the plan. One of the things that allows me to do this is we are no longer running the original bench seat up here. We're going with bucket seats and probably going to make some sort of center console at some point. I don't know if we're going to do that today, but because I'm running bench seats, I can bring this up and that will not interfere with the height of the original style bench seat in here. So it's all going to work out pretty good, I think, and I would much rather have that single piece drive shaft in here than the center support bearing with a 2-piece. So I already got some lines laid out on the top of the X-frame there. I'm going to support the bottom. I'm going to do it half at a time. I'm only going to take half of it off, add the height onto that side, get everything stitched up, then I'll do the other side. And the reason I'm going to do that is so I basically don't cut the entire top off and have anything move. I'll just do it in 2 different sections. How I'm going to do that is I have a piece of 5-inch ID pipe right there. I'm going to split that in half, which is going to make it about 2.5 inches tall, and then I will have to add some 1/4-inch strips on the side to achieve my full 3.5-inch height that I need on that X-frame. So I am going to start cutting that piece of pipe up, make some parts, support the chassis, and start cutting this thing apart. All right, guys, well, I got half of my tunnel currently in on the X-frame. Just like I said I was gonna do it, half at a time. Now, if you notice on the first half, I opted to use a cutoff wheel to cut the actual top of the X-frame off. And basically the only reason I did that was because with a cutoff wheel, you have such a fine line that you can kind of see or feel and or gauge by if the wheel's getting smushed, if things are actually moving around on the bottom side. And I'm gonna say this much, with the floor jack under that X-frame and cutting with that cutting wheel, I don't think anything moved at all, like zero. Nothing got skinnier, nothing got wider. The tube laid right down, perfectly matched up with where I cut. Nothing moved on that X-frame, and that's pretty much what I expected, the way everything's built with those shapes and reinforcement on the side. So, at this point, I got the back half on. I did kind of fit that with the template on the table earlier, and that fit really nice. Let's get a flashlight. Fit really nice to the contour of the original X-frame here. Just the way that all laid in there. I'm exactly 3 3/8 of an inch higher now from what it was before. A little bit less than 1/2 of an inch, a little bit less than 3.5 inch raise on the original X-frame. So if I take my straight edge and go back out under the back seat, I just went and measured that up to verify that I could fit this tunnel under that seat without actually putting a crown in the center of the material on the bottom cushion. And actually there should be plenty of room under that. This is less than halfway up the face side of the seat, which, like I said earlier, I could just cut in a half circle in that and just raise up for tunnel clearance. And at the back side, I pretty much don't have to do anything to the seat if I carry my sheet metal tunnel out all the way back to up there where the floor pan comes up. So nothing moved, everything's good, everything's looking great. On the front side, I'm gonna switch over to the plasma cutter to take out this front half because I don't think I have to worry about anything moving at this point. So cut out the rest of this, get the other half on, take my time stitching everything up in here, and should be good to go. After that, I'll move on to some sheet metal. bad for the first try. Not bad at all. All right, guys, well, at this point, I have the tunnel fitted into the car from the firewall all the way back to the drive shaft tunnel. At this point, I'm going to shut it down for the night on the filming end, and I'm going to jack the music up here in the shop and finish welding all of this. Probably about 16, 17 feet of weld I need to lay down here yet tonight. I'm going to go ahead and weld that all the way around the toe boards and the firewall, all the way back. Get all of the seams welded up, and when I come back in the morning, we'll go ahead and swap out that shifter, design a shifter tower, and get all that wrapped up and everything ground down. And once that's finished, it's finished. It's all over with on the tunnel, and at that point, we'll probably move on to basically cleaning the entire car out, vacuuming it, and patching some of these rust holes here. There's another big one on the other side. Get everything wrapped up and prep the entire floor system out for paint. Out of gas. Out of gas with 3 inches to weld yet. That sucks. Here. Live with that. Seats are a bit of an odd choice for the car, but they're definitely comfortable. I like it. I think I'm going to make some brackets right away. That's pretty nice. Oh yeah. Alright guys, car's up in the air. I got all my seam sealing done up inside the car. Obviously used the brushable seam sealer on all the weld lines and the caulk tube on all the factory sheet metal seams, like on the firewall and on the rockers where the floor pans meet the rockers. Obviously got the engine out, and basically now that that's out, we can see under the car all the bottom side of the brand new tunnel. Turned out awesome. I like it. Got a little bit of grinding to do on the edges here where I have a little bit of hangover. Bottom side, I'm just going to take the cutting wheel and knock off all the high spots and any of the wires that I had sticking through. A little bit of cleanup here on the front of the X-frame. I got to finish cutting out this section here and weld the bottom of the floor brace here. This is the floor brace section, and I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to add something like this, just a small 3/8 ring around the top of this or not. I really don't think it's going to need it, so I probably won't. I'll just cut this section out. Moving on to the back side, got a little bit more welding to do on the bottom of that floor brace as well. And moving back here, got a little bit of sheet metal to trim off. One thing I noticed on the whole deal is the pinion does hang a little bit lower than the X-frame here. And I'm not 100% sure or not, because I know that transmission sits high. It's pretty high up here in the tunnel. It might, I guess if I kind of eyeball that, it might clear, but there is a chance I might just clip the back edge of this bottom of the X-frame when the car is up on the hoist with the rear suspension hanging. So I'm going to want to keep an eye on that when I put the new drive shaft in, just so I don't lift it up in the air and put a ding in a brand new drive shaft. So cross that bridge when I get the new shaft. Anyway, I'm going to get the grinder out, knock down all these welds, seam seal the bottom of the car, and then I'm ready to spray some more SEM Rust Guard on the bottom of the floor pans and on the inside. So that wraps up the floor pans. It was 2 days ago when I sprayed the SEM Rust Guard inside the car here. It's pretty much dry at this point in time, so at this point everything is sealed and pretty much ready to start applying sound deadener in here. Got everything sprayed up the firewall and under the dash. Pretty much anywhere there was rusty original metal, I hit that stuff. Everything's coated basically from the firewall now back to the rear axle, inside and underneath the car. As you saw, I sprayed pretty much all the way back to just the front of the suspension here, and I think when I do the fuel tank install, after that's all completed, I'll wire wheel everything pretty much from here back and probably shoot the rest of that in SEM Rust Guard underneath too, as well as in the trunk when I get to that fuel tank part. Firewall up here, that turned out all right. That's kind of hidden by the engine. Got a little bit of an overspray mark. I was actually thinking about hitting that with a rag with lacquer thinner on it, and that would probably blend that right out, but that's just a little area where I burned it off when I welded the tunnel in. Not going to be a problem. Like I said, the engine hides it anyway. And speaking of the engine, yesterday off camera, I decided to work on that. He wanted the thing painted Cadillac blue. I decided to pull the transmission off right away because when this thing goes back in the car, that's going to be the last time, hopefully. Hopefully that's the last time it goes in the car, and then it's time for wiring, exhaust, fuel system, and all that stuff. So I pulled the trans off to put it on the stand to make the paint job and cleaning the block easier. And when I pulled the transmission out, what's really odd is the clutch looks great. Clutch looks perfect on the thing, but look at the flywheel. I don't know what's up with that. It looks like it was almost underwater or had condensation on it. It's really pitted here, bad. But the clutch disc looks fine, so I don't know if someone just threw a disc in and didn't bother to surface the flywheel at one point in time. Anyway, regardless, I'm gonna go ahead and take the flywheel out, have that resurfaced, and probably just run the clutch because it looks great. Gonna have the flywheel resurfaced. Right now, the engine is actually not painted Cadillac blue. It's painted Ford blue, and the reason is because we had ordered some Cadillac blue paint for this thing, and basically it came out of the can like water, and I blew one can on here and it barely covered anything and was kind of running off the block all over the place. So this morning I came in, buried the thing with a can and a half of Ford blue. I got the water pump over there painted Ford blue as well. Beginning of the next video, we'll go ahead and shoehorn the engine back in the car, and then probably start working on the radiator after that, as well as one other thing. I've kind of been messing around with this most of the morning today. You ever see these? We didn't even know what these were actually. Someone gave these things to me and we kind of just thought they were fancy aluminum LS valve covers. Well, come to find out, they're actually for putting small block Chevy valve covers over the coil packs, which is kind of a cool idea. And actually, he kind of wanted me to put Cadillac valve covers on this LS engine, which I've kind of been mocking that up this morning. It's going to be a little bit more tricky than the Chevy valve cover. The Chevy ones are tall and square, but the Cadillac ones, which I sandblasted this morning, they've got this angle on there, and that's really kind of screwing my program up. But after looking at this for about an hour today, I kind of have a plan how I can actually get the coil packs to fit under here. Also, these round coils that came with these valve covers, I'm not going to trust those. I'm going to go ahead and use these stock coils out of the Camaro and try to squeeze those under here and try to make all this work out so we can run the Cadillac valve covers on top of these, on top of the LS3, and I think that's going to be pretty cool. So that is going to wrap it up for this one. Got a lot accomplished in the last, well, it's about a week and a half of work I just did on this thing. All the floor pans are modified to fit. We got room for a one-piece drive shaft now. Everything's painted from the rear axle forward. Seats are mounted, engine's painted. It's looking pretty good at this point. So next video, like I said, gonna put the radiator in after the engine is back in the car. Also gonna try to modify those coil packs and those valve covers to make all that Cadillac stuff work on the top of this thing. Basically the only big thing after that is building a fuel tank for the thing, painting the rest of the sheet metal in the trunk and under the rear of the car, and then it's on to a serious amount of wiring, brake lines, fuel lines. It'll be getting pretty close at that point. So appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching. Till next time.